Let's talk about shading. The first thing we need to consider when shading is our light source. More specifically, where the light is and how that's affecting the objects in your drawing. For this example, our light source will be right here. So shading with a pencil won't help us much because traditionally comic book art is inked. So let's use our pens. We're going to draw a box. To save time, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just copy our box and move them into place. First technique I'm going to teach you is hatching. You may have seen it before in the eye example. Basically, for hatching, you're going to start away from your light source, creating a bunch of lines that are close together in one direction, and as you move closer to your light source, you're going to space the lines farther apart and have fewer and fewer lines. Notice the more time I spend putting lines in a spot, the darker that spot seems to be. And by the end you should have 3 values, one with all the paper covered, one with some of the paper covered, and one with barely any. The next technique we're going to talk about is called cross hatching, and it's pretty much the same thing, except instead of going in one direction, your lines are going to go in 2 directions, intersecting each other, but the process is still the same. The further away from the light source you are, the more lines you'll have and the closer they'll be. And the closer to the light source you are, you'll have fewer lines, and the lines that are there will be further apart. This technique is called stippling. It is the same process, just with dots. The area furthest away from your light source will have the most dots, and the closer together they'll be, until you get to the light source where there'll be very few dots, and they'll be real spaced out. You can also use shading to show texture and depth. Notice underneath Cable's arms you can see the basic shapes. You can see where the light is hitting him. You can tell that his arm is hairy. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to use an orange and stipple. The further away from the light source I am, the more dots there'll be. Notice in the area closest to the light source, I didn't even finish my line. There we go, an orange. Now we're going to talk about perspective. So what is perspective? Perspective is the art of drawing objects on a 2-dimensional surface, like a sheet of paper, to give the impression of their height, width, depth, and position in relation to each other when viewed from a particular point. Or you could say your point of view, or maybe what an object looks like from where you are. Alright, the first technique I'm going to teach you is called one-point perspective. So we're going to draw a horizon line. Now this is as far as the eye can see. So imagine like the horizon on the ocean. Next is the vanishing point. And the vanishing point is like a little black hole. All the objects in your drawings will get closer and closer and smaller until they vanish inside of the vanishing point. Notice on this example of a street how the lines seem to vanish right where our vanishing point is. In this example, we're going to draw a cube. So what's the basic shape in a cube? It's a square, but that looks pretty two-dimensional, so let's move it over. Now in this position, we should be able to see the side of the square. So let's draw the ends of the square and use our construction lines to show us the correct position of the top and bottom of our cube. So I'm going to darken the horizon. There we have a cube in 1 point perspective. Let's do something fun. Let's make our own street. So I'm going to draw the horizon line and a vanishing point, a few construction lines all coming out of our vanishing point in a bunch of different directions. Starting with the sides of the street, that might be our sidewalk. So I'm going to draw a little lip down here. And then we're going to draw the lines on the street. And again, as we move towards the vanishing point, these objects will get smaller and closer together. Alright, I'm going to draw a few construction lines to help us visualize that. And that's going to help us draw the lines on the sidewalk.
What exactly are you looking
for? Next we're going to do some street poles. We'll use this construction line to show us where the tops of the poles will be. We'll use this construction line to show us where grass starts on the ground. And on this side we'll use our cube trick and we'll make this a little building. We'll use this construction line to show us where the top door of the building will be. I'm going to draw another line coming out from the vanishing point to here to make a window. This is a store. So I'm going to make another construction line. I'm going to do a little garbage can here. And we're going to use the lines on the sidewalk as reference to show us where this should be. This to show us where the grass is grown here. Let's fill in the horizon and make this all a big field. Draw the sun. Let's get some depth to this field. We're going to use the same process of shading and hatching that we used before. The lines closer to the vanishing point will be close together. The lines in the foreground will be farther apart. Let's add a few more details, and then we have a street in 1 point perspective. Let's do 2 vanishing points, and to illustrate that, we'll do 2 black holes. So let's do construction lines that all vanish into our vanishing points. And we're going to use another cube as an example. So I'm going to add the ends of the cube. We already have construction lines to show us where the tops and the bottoms and the sides will be. And draw the horizon. There's a cube in 2 point perspective. Here's a cool trick. So let's make some block letters on one side here. Just scribble in some block letters. And notice the closer I am to the vanishing point, the closer my block letters are together, and the further away I get, the larger those letters get, and the further away from each other they get. So now we got some loose block letters, and from the corners of those block letters, let's draw construction lines to the other vanishing point. Now if these were 3D letters, let's try to imagine where the ends of them will be. So I'm going to draw the backs of them. And then I'm going to darken the front of the letters. And now we have my name in 3D. Let's make it pop by darkening the insides. So let's talk about a tricky one, 3 point perspective. Remember that these vanishing points are like black holes, even this bottom one. So let's draw our construction lines. And this is going to make a very strange cube, but this technique is how comic book artists do bird's eye view. So let's make this a building. There you go. And notice the object that's closest is almost level with us and is in 2-point perspective. And here we have 2 lonely buildings from a bird's eye view. But this technique is how comic book artists created this effect. And this one. So besides backgrounds, how does this help us? Look at these 2 figures. Which one of these looks cooler? I think the one on the right. That's the difference between a static and dynamic drawing. You can use perspective to map out how your figures realistically move through space and put them in creative and unique poses. Let's talk about creating covers. So comic book creators use comic book creator paper, and it's covered in these blue lines, and these blue lines show you the bleed allowance and the amount of space you have to draw. Here's a cover, and notice how the entire cover is within this rectangle. When drawing your cover, you should consider the other things that your artwork will share the space with, like the title, the publisher stamp, and also the barcode. You can see where this artist made space for the barcode by drawing these small, goofy little panels here. So let's talk about composition. So composition is basically how you lay the objects out in your artwork. But it's safe to just lay a grid over your panel or your artwork and make sure that your subject or the focal point lies in one of the intersections on the grid. Or have all the lines run from or to your subject. Also, while drawing panels or covers, be wary of tangent lines. Basically, because all of your drawings will be line art, sometimes the lines will run together and make for a very confusing perspective, like in this example. So with all those things considered, let's see some cool comic covers.